If we fall down, we must get up. If we fall down, we must get up. Often we realize that we made a mistake and we want to correct it. However, in Julie's case, it was too late when she discovered the man she was with is very dangerous. It started when Julie from Jersey, who was 32 at the time, she left her husband and 3-year-old daughter to have an affair with a 24-year-old man named George that she met on a cruise ship that she took with her husband. Yes, she met her lover on a cruise ship when her husband took her on vacation to get reacquainted and get closer after she had their child. Her husband owned and operated a successful landscaping business. Julie helped out as the office manager. Before they had their baby, Julie was in the modeling business. And she got there because her husband entered her in, I believe it was a swimsuit contest. Well, she is very beautiful and she had a smoking body. And the contestant organizers loved her picture, and her modeling career took off after that. Shortly after, or some years after she started modeling, she became pregnant, and after she had their daughter, she was struggling with postpartum depression. The baby weight was hard to lose, and she was just going downhill. So that's when her husband decided to take her on a trip so they can get closer. Well, the first cruise, was when she met George, the 24-year-old lover from Greece. They talked for a bit, and then shortly after they returned home, Julie and her husband, she told him, "Hey, I booked another trip." He's like, "Where to?" She said, "The same place we went the last time." He said, "Oh, really? Okay." So Julie knew that George worked as an engineer on this specific cruise ship. So she booked the same vacation because she wanted to see him. This time, when she was in the water, George came up to her and was talking more intimate with her. Her husband was sitting on a lounge chair talking to some other guests. And he saw her and George talking, but it didn't raise any red flags because Julie always gave out her number to strangers. Yes. And she became friends with them. So he thought it was just another stranger she became friends with. So during his second cruise, George, the 24-year-old from Greece, started saying some corny shit to her. He was saying, "Oh, if I was your husband, I would never leave you alone for a minute. And I would love you more than da-da-da-da." That corny stuff dudes used to say back in the day. Remember the 80s? They used to say, "Hey, Miss Lady. Miss Lady." And they used to say it to teenagers. I was like 14 or 15. These old-ass men would come up to me. "Hey, Miss Lady. How you doing today?" "Miss Lady." Anyway, he was saying some corny stuff like that to Julie. She fell for it. She was 32 at the time, and he was probably 22. Because when they decided to get married, she was 34, and he was 24. So their relationship developed real fast. Like, so quickly. It was crazy. And Julie decided that she wasn't happy in her marriage anymore. So she told her husband she wanted a divorce and that she wanted to move to Greece with George, who was from Greece. And she told her husband that she was taking the baby with her. Her husband was like, "No, you're not. You can move to Greece all you want, but you're not taking our child with you to Greece with the man she hardly knows." And Julie left anyway, without her child. So when she first took a trip to Greece, it was during tourist season. They went to Kavala. That's where George lives. And everything was open. Everything was popping. Restaurants was open. They were dancing, drinking. Tourist season. Unbeknownst to Julie, Kavala shuts down after tourist season is over. She met his family. She had a great time. And when she actually moved to Greece 3 months later, get this, she had all her stuff boxed up and shipped over there. Her china. She bought her wedding dress to marry George. And like everything she had at home that was hers or theirs, she boxed up and has shipped to Athens. I don't know why she had it shipped to Athens. Maybe she couldn't ship it directly to Kavala. But Athens is 7 hours away from Kavala. So they she moved there with George. I think about 3 months after she was divorced. And before she moved there, she was buying George clothes, suits, and she even sent for him to come and visit her in Jersey. And guess where she stayed? He stayed with her and her husband. There might have been exes at the time, but he stayed in the man's house. I don't know what her husband was thinking. I guess he knew that they were seeing each other, and Julie still helped her husband with the business after they divorced. So she was working in the home office, and George came on her dime, visited her, and Julie's mother was there. And Julie's mother told George that he was no good. How can you be a man, living off a woman, and staying in another man's house? Like, that pissed George off. So George grabbed Julie's mother's neck and started choking her. He started choking her. So Julie's husband, or ex at the time, kicked George out and got a restraining order on him for him to stay away from the house and the people in it. Not Julie, though, because she loved George and she was going to marry him. So they start talking about it, and they were telling other people what George did to Julie's mother, and Julie lied and said that didn't happen. Julie said her mother made it up. Her husband saw it. Julie's mother experienced it. But Julie was taking up for George, and she knew he had a bad temper and a short fuse. But, well, so Julie was arguing with her husband. Why are you getting a restraining on him? It's obvious why. I don't know what was wrong with Julie, but she was smart. She was well known in Jersey from her modeling career, and I'm not sure if she just experienced the depressive state or she just wanted a new life. Oh, she was telling her husband that she wanted the life she had before. Modeling, hanging out, drinking, going out partying, dancing. So she wanted that life. So that's why she was so insistent on moving to Greece with George. Now, 23-year-old, he still lived with his mom in Greece. So while they were making plans to get married, they made plans to start a business. Now, Julie received $600,000 from her divorce settlement. So as soon as she got the first lump sum of $80,000, she gave it to George. Actually, she put it in the account and opened it up in her and George's name. And he had access to her money. So, as soon as Julie moved to Greece, her mother, actually George's family that they were living with, found out Julie had a 3-year-old daughter. They were so upset, they threw Julie and George out of the house. They threw them on the streets. Eventually, they got an apartment together, and when they were on the way to get Julie's things, she had shipped to Athens, a 7-hour-long ride. Before they went, Julie called her husband back in the States and told him that she wanted to come home. He was like, "What's stopping you? You can come home, but you're not living here, and you're not seeing our daughter until we get some therapy and talk about some things." She agreed to that. So when she was on her way to get her things from Athens with George, she told George that she wanted to go back home. George snapped. He pulled over and started choking her in the car. He choked her so long and so hard that he killed her. Yes, he killed her. He panicked, I guess, and he went to his grandmother's house, got a suitcase. Actually, he dumped Julie's body on the side of the road, went to his grandmother's house, got a suitcase, tried to put Julie's body in the suitcase. It wouldn't fit, so he went back to his grandmother's house, got a hacksaw, cut off her head, put her body in the suitcase, dumped her body in the river in the suitcase, put her head in the car, in the trunk, drove her head to let me get this right. Drove her head to the agency and threw her head in the sea. Now, Julie noticed that George was losing his temper a lot. And she found out slowly that he was a bit crazy. Now, the way her husband found out they were cheating is because when she divorced her husband, she stayed working in the office, working on his business, and her and George would fax each other all day, every day. The phone line was busy. No customers could get through because they were too busy sending love notes through fax. And when when Julie's husband saw this $7,000 phone bill, I think it was a monthly bill, he knew that George was not just a friend, and he was more than that to Julie. somehow, Julie's husband got in contact with George's family, and I believe his cousin told Julie's family that he was crazy. He was hospitalized for schizophrenia. He stabbed his dad, and he threw his dad down the steps. And they told Julie's family that he lost his temper frequently. I don't know if Julie knew he stabbed his dad or if her family found this out after she went missing. So, when she was missing, George put a message out to the media crying, I can't find my fiance, and the day she went missing, George called Julie's family in the States and said, "Where's Julie?" They were like, "Isn't she with you?" "Yeah, well, she was, but we got into an argument and we went separate ways." We were shopping, we got into an argument. She was mad because she wanted something to eat and she was heading to McDonald's, and I was making a phone call, and I never saw her after that. But a tip came through, and the investigators were looking through his car. They didn't have to look long because the smell almost made them sick. They didn't see anything. They saw blood, but they said it smelled like a dead animal, rotten trash, and something else mixed up together. So they kept catching George in lies. They booked him at the police station, and they finally got him to confess that he killed Julie because he was mad that she wanted to come back home to her husband. Now, if I was Julie, I wouldn't tell him nothing, especially if he was taking her 7 hours away to get her things she had shipped from the United States to Greece. She told him during that car ride that she wasn't moving in together. They weren't getting married. And she was moving back home to Jersey. People have to stop doing that. People have to think. She's all the way in Greece. She's telling her 24-year-old lover that she no longer wants to be with him. She doesn't speak Greek. She only knows English, and George's family didn't speak English. So she was stuck. She did it all wrong. When she realized that she made a mistake, she tried to fix it, but it was too late. She just did it wrong. And George was corny. He was taking pictures with his shirt off. He was just looking like a little scrawny thing. Oh, yeah. And before she moved to Greece, she was buying him clothes, and she bought him a toupee. So he was 24 and losing his hair. So, another thing I forgot to say, that when George acted like he didn't know where she was. He was like, maybe the human traffickers got her. And when Julie's family called Greece, I think the U.S. Embassy, they were like, we need to look for Julie. She's missing. And the person at the U.S. Embassy said, maybe she got sold for drugs. That's common. She said it happens all the time. And she said, we're not doing anything to look for her. We're not doing anything. Because Greece is well known for human trafficking. 40,000 missing people a year in Greece for human trafficking or getting sold for drugs. I guess that's the same thing. So, yeah. So a couple of things she didn't like when she went back, when she actually moved, and reality actually hit her. She didn't like that it was not jumping, like touristy, partying, drinking. That was dead because they lived in Kabbalah. Another thing, I just lost my train of thought. Another thing, and I just lost my train of thought. So she didn't like the fact that it was not party city all the time. She didn't like the fact that they had to live with his parents. And when they realized that she had a 3-year-old daughter, they wasn't really happy for the relationship anymore. So, this is a lesson to people that leave their comfortable life because they're bored or they want to party, especially if you're thinking about moving out of the country with some stranger, with some young stranger that doesn't have anything he owns and still lives with his parents and talks you into giving up your divorce settlement so he can start a business. Oh, that was another thing he was mad about. He wouldn't have access to her money because they were in an argument about how he was handling her money. So when Julie found out she made a terrible mistake, she tried to write it, but it was too wrong. It was too late. She did her husband dirty. She left her 3-year-old kid because she was infatuated with this young guy. And she ended up getting murdered because he couldn't control her. She wanted to leave his home country and go back to the States because she was not happy. So before anybody decides to leave their nice, comfortable life just for a fling, think about everything that can go wrong. Think about everything that can go wrong, and think about how it will not only affect you, but affect other people around you. And because Greece has this rehabilitation law in place, George only spent 8 years in prison. When he got out, he got married, and him and his wife live in Kavala, where Julie was supposed to live with him after they were married. Lesson learned.